Hey everyone. So, I put out a video back in April after EverCraft Online hosted a public pre-alpha test that I called I Spent 8 Hours Trying Out EverCraft Online. Well, EverCraft had another public test last weekend, and I spent way more than 8 hours in it this time. Like, probably closer to 30 or 35. This game has me pretty hooked at this point, and it's a shame that I have to wait around for public tests to get back in. While playing, I kept an eye on global chat, and there were a couple themes I saw come up over and over, and I wanted to address them in this video. I'm going to start with a real softball in maps. A lot of players love that there are no maps, and I'm definitely on board with that. I admit that it's nice to grab a quest, pop open your map, see the objective marked on it, and see exactly where you need to go to get there. It's a convenience. A quality of life comfort edition. It allows you to play a game without having to bother with things like thinking or remembering. You know what I noticed playing a game like World of Warcraft, for example? It very rarely had my full attention. I would go to a quest hub, pick up a few quests, look at my map, and head that way. But as soon as I closed my map, I would forget the path because I didn't bother to remember it. I knew I could just pop open the map again and look after 10 steps to remind myself where I was going. And then after reaching my destination, I would already forget why I'm there, so I'd pop open the map and mouse over the objectives to see exactly what I'm supposed to do. And then I would check again for the next quest and repeat. Then when I'm done, I would follow the map back. The whole time, never really taking in anything around me. I would use the most efficient, lowest effort path to finish a task and barely interact with the game world outside of that. You know what I found myself doing while questing in EverCraft? Paying attention. To everything. When talking to an NPC, I would read the text and try and understand the context of the task because the objective isn't just marked on a map for me. I have to actually figure it out based on what the NPCs said. And then when I'm on my way to a new area to try and complete that quest, I have to pay attention. I can't just open a map and autopilot my way there. I have to look around and notice my surroundings. Because if I don't, I might not be able to find my way back. I have to be conscious of how long I was running. If I stray from a path, I need to take note of landmarks or geography because if I die, I need to be able to find my way back to my body. And if I succeed in the quest, I need to be able to find my way home. Not having a map as a crutch adds a level of immersion to the world of the game that you just don't get in some other MMOs, and it helps players to appreciate the depth of the world that the game developers have built. I remember playing EverQuest back in the early days before there was any map tool at all, and I felt the same thing with that game. Navigating by landmarks and memory was an accomplishment that made me feel like a part of that world. I can still run through the old EverQuest zones without a map. They're seared into my memory at this point. Now, naturally, people are going to make homemade maps and share them, and that's fine. That's different. You still need to take in your surroundings for an out-of-game map to be of any help at all, and it doesn't break the immersion like an in-game map would. So I'm going to go from that and hop right into an argument. Contested raid targets. As far as I know, there's no raid content in EverCraft Online yet. At least I didn't see anything in my playthrough, but I did only get to level 9. The closest I saw to a raid was the epic final party at the obelisk on Sunday evening, and that was really cool. But naturally, people are already arguing about how raid content should look when it gets into the game. There is a loud group of players that insist that it would not be a true old-school MMO without open-world contested raid targets. And to those people, I would like to respond with an emphatic boo. Open-world contested raids are fun, for the players on top. But for everyone else, it quickly turns into an aspect of the game they will not get to see. And when you get hit by that realization that you might never get to experience the end game, the part of an MMO that everyone seems to be striving and working towards, it can really kill your desire to play it. Contested raids, or raids at all for that matter, are not in the game yet, and I already saw the toxic behavior that always results from it seeping into global chat and Discord. You see people stating their opinion that the game has to have contested raid targets because beating someone else to a kill is the only thing that can make them feel joy anymore. These people insist that for there to be a winner, there must also be a loser. I mean, what fun is killing a raid target if another group can also kill that raid target? This mindset leads to the belief that there are two groups of players in the game: the serious players, who deserve access to content and loot, and the casual players, who do not. It also turns the game into a race to the top, instead of a journey to be enjoyed. The first group to get raid content on lockdown has the upper hand, and if they choose to, and don't kid yourself, they often do, they can keep it on lockdown, preventing competition from being able to kill those targets. If you don't rush to the endgame, you might find yourself on the outside looking in. I've already seen this attitude when it comes to out DPSing and stealing being in air quotes, common lower level mobs from people. I saw someone complain in Discord that higher level characters were stealing their kills by out DPSing mobs they had tagged, and someone actually responded by saying, "It's your own fault for being bad at the game. I sincerely hope that I can personally be the one to disappoint you by taking your mob." I'm paraphrasing, but seriously, what a terrible attitude to have. There are ways around this. The obvious one is instancing, but instance gameplay really does hurt the social and community aspects of a game, and a lot of people, myself included, are understandably against the idea. Another option is using first to engage to determine who a mob belongs to. It isn't perfect or even ideal in some situations, but it works well with grouping content in an open world dungeon scenario. But it doesn't really do much to address the raid content. One idea that I don't see done often enough is having triggered content that locks to the group, raid, or individual that triggers it. This works particularly well with raid or group events that involve a script playing out with multiple mobs or fights. It also opens the door to having raids be an event or fight that is the culmination of a long and difficult quest chain, instead of raids being finding and killing a static mob who happens to be way more powerful than everything else and carries a bunch of loot all the time. If the process to trigger a raid takes work and is time-locked so it can only be done by a raider group once a week, or some other amount of time, it will prevent it from being abused and triggered over and over for free loot. Having the events loot locked to whoever triggered them by completing the quest allows them to stay in the open world without worry of them being stolen, and making them visible to anyone nearby who can also choose to chip in and help just for fun if they see a raid happening. And you know what? Once there's endgame content that everyone has access to, then go ahead and add a contested open world mob so the real tryhards can have a cookie too. After all, having a huge raid mob wandering around somewhere in the open world can add a spicy bit of danger to keep you on your toes. The third thing I wanted to discuss is the pace of play. There was a little back and forth that I saw over how long it takes to level or progress or craft things or really do anything in EverCraft. Some felt that the pace was too slow, that leveling at least should be faster, while others made a very solid point that the game is not a sprint, it's a marathon. I briefly touched on this in my previous point, but I feel like with a game like this, focusing on grinding to max level as fast as possible hurts the immersion and makes the game less enjoyable. I know I'm not saying anything controversial here. The majority of people I saw discussing this point in game and in Discord have been firmly on the side of take your time and enjoy the journey. Having a game that takes a long time to level up can be a lot of fun. But there's a catch. There has to be enough to do along the way. Slow leveling is not fun when all you're doing is grinding on mobs for hours upon hours. But if there are things to do while you level, like progressive quest chains that level with you and take you to different areas of the world, or an emphasis on gathering and crafting as a primary source for gear and consumables, then leveling turns into a thing that happens while you're enjoying a cool game. There's always room for grinding on mobs in an MMO, and I would hate to see that gone completely though. I do enjoy joining a group and chatting while sitting at a camp for hours, but that shouldn't be all there is. Something that immediately sucked me into the game during public tests has been the quest chains that start with your guildmaster as soon as you enter the game. Quest chains like that are a great way to get players started and drop in breadcrumbs to lead them from area to area. So those were my main thoughts on the community discussions I saw while I was playing the game. As for the gameplay itself, I have a few thoughts. The crafting system was a lot of fun. I've heard some talk that they plan on streamlining it a bit, which is great. I just hope they don't go too far with the streamlining. I mentioned in a previous video that I really like how complicated and time-consuming it is, because it adds to the accomplishment of it, and there's really no need to rush through something like that in the game. One thing I do think would be cool to add, and this kind of ties into crafting and questing, is to tag some of the items dropped from mobs as quest or crafting items. No need to explicitly say what they're for, but just seeing a tag on an item that it's used for something prompts you to try and find that use rather than guess if it's something you should just vendor. I also loved the idea of the campfires. Finding a spot to sit and camp some mobs is pretty standard MMO stuff, but there's something about picking your spot and then literally setting up a camp by having a campfire that's a really great feeling. And getting a regen buff from it is a great bonus as well. And it's not overpowered because to get the benefit, you're tethered to that spot, and it makes sense that you would get a bonus from something like that. The only thing I wish was different was to have the ability to pick it up and move it, even if it's just once. There were a couple times when I dropped my fire only to realize that it was on the exact spawn point for a mob, and I had to make a new one and set up a little farther away for safety reasons. Combat seems solid, if a little boring. I played a monk and a beast lord this playtest, and while combat was somewhat satisfying, I feel like it could use some more things to do. I've not played a caster yet, so maybe it's different for them, but having a greater variety of skills to use while fighting would go a long way towards making longer fights more enjoyable. But, of course, this is a very early stage in game development, so I'm sure they have plenty planned to address that already that just hasn't made its way into the game yet. I'm also not a big fan of how skinning and butchering looks. I like the way it works, but the actual visuals of it look like they were just hastily added to have something there, and I really hope they will look a lot more polished in the future. I love gathering skills like that, and I would hate to have to always look at that blue bar that doesn't scale well with the UI every time I skin or butcher something. Also, there doesn't seem to be a way to skin and butcher the same animal. That just feels wasteful to me. Use every part of the animal, right? So the last thing I want to talk about is the gathering at the end of the weekend at the Halloween event Obelisk. Wow, was that ever a lot of fun. I was playing with my friend at the time killing some gnolls when we saw the announcement that there was going to be a get-together at 9 and a group picture at 10. We actually debated continuing what we were doing for a while before heading over for the picture, but I didn't want to miss anything, so I insisted that we drop everything and run straight over. And man, am I ever glad we did. The huge mass of players gathered was a sight to see on its own, but add to that fireworks, giant mobs to fight, Hidden Tree flying around on a broom, and so much spamming in the chat, it just made for a great time. How the game stayed up and appeared somewhat stable for an hour of that is just mind-blowing to me. There are finished games out there that couldn't handle that kind of stress without slowing down to the point of being unplayable. I mean, sure, the game crashed after the picture at 10, but that was after an hour-long party, and I feel like they were trying to see if they could break the server at that point. It really was the perfect send-off for a great weekend. Overall, I had a great time playing last weekend. The game is looking great, so huge shout out to the devs for putting in the work and making something that runs so well even at such an early stage in development. The community environment in-game was also great, everyone was friendly and helpful, and the troublemakers were definitely the exception. I look forward to getting back into Adralan in the future, and I hope to see you all there when I do. Talk to you next time.